Yeah, today's my part, watch this later. Yeah, so basically, we're just going to do a really informal Ask Me Anything session for you guys on interviews. You'll have lots coming up, so ask away. And yeah, do you guys just want to introduce yourselves quickly and give a little bit background?
Hey guys, my name is Laurel. I graduated Lighthouse, I guess, a little over 2 years ago. I was right after I graduated, I worked actually at Lighthouse as the Lighthouse intern, who is now Chandra, I think. And then I went to my current company, which is Lateral Labs, where I've been since.
Hey, I'm Steph. I graduated, I think, 2.5 years ago. Right after I graduated, I started my first job, and I was there for about 2 years. And then I left that just looking for other opportunities, and it ended up at Laurel's company. So now we work together, and I've been there for about 4 months now. Yeah, it's been good.
All right, well, we're supposed to come prepared with questions, so who wants to start us off? Yeah.
What was the hardest part in finding a job? Like the technical interview or
Do you want to go? Do you have like anything?
So I guess probably the hardest part is just like when you start, you kind of have quite a bit of motivation, and then if you get like a few rejections or you don't hear back, then it's kind of hard to keep that going. But it is obviously very important to keep that going. But yeah, I guess in terms of the actual interview itself, yes, sorry. I don't know. I never encountered any of the really like kind of what you think are like the more computer sciencey types of questions in interviews that I've had. They've always been kind of more, I guess, general, not super specific coding based. Yeah, so I don't think the interviews themselves have been that difficult. I don't know. Do you have?
Yeah, I would agree with that in terms of my own experience. My technical interviews have not been like crazy algorithm sorting things. I think the hardest part for me has been like the overwhelming imposter syndrome that persists no matter like how much experience you have, it seems. I mean, I'm only in this 2 years, but when I was reapplying for new jobs, it was just like, well, I don't qualify for this one bullet point of this job description, so I'm not going to apply. And so that was kind of like, or that was actually very hindering and like very difficult for me because I felt like if I didn't meet all the criteria, then like what was the point in applying? And a piece of advice that my senior developer told me at the time, who knew that I was leaving my job, he was saying, well, if you meet like 60 to 80%, you should probably just apply and just go for it, because if anything, it's good practice. So that was like probably the hardest part of applying, was just like having that like confidence to like just apply and like fill it out. Another thing was just like when I first graduated, I had applied for like one job, and then they offered me the position. And at that point, I was like, well, is this the only thing I'm gonna get, or like, should I wait for something that's better? So I don't know if there's like an answer for that, because that was just like a weird situation to be in, like right after graduation, like having this job opportunity. But that was also something that was really difficult, was like just like trying to figure out for myself whether or not that was something I should go for or something that I should wait on. And I think that like whether or not you should do it depends on like whether or not the company's right for you, and like whether or not the job provides the learning opportunities that you're looking for. So it's really dependent on what it is. But yeah, for me it was like this weird like timeline where it's like, well, I should have applied for more jobs, and like now I have this offer, and what else is out there?
What were your first projects, and 2 years later, what are you doing now?
Our first projects at like Lighthouse.
No, sorry. Like, what was the first task when you knew jobs? Like,
Hmm.
what was the days to do a week?
Do you want to?
Sure. So I guess while I was at Lighthouse, it was mostly just working on the like the Lighthouse website and the like internal CRM. That was mostly just like bug fixes and like small feature implementations. So I guess that was my like hazing. For the job that I'm at right now, it was I just did like a really small project for like a small startup. It was like teaching abroad type of thing. It was just a basic kind of Rails CRUD app for the most part. So that was a good intro, I guess. Yeah.
Was that from scratch too? Like.
Yeah. So that was from the ground up. Yeah.
Yeah, my experience was kind of the same. With my first job, my first project was something that was like barely related to so it was one main site, and they wanted to build like a WordPress site on top of that site. So my first project was the WordPress site, so that like if I made any mistakes, it would not interfere with the main site, which is like pretty reasonable given that I'm a new dev and like they don't actually like fully trust me yet with like the code base. So that was kind of like a separate like self-enclosed project. The first project at my current job at Lateral Labs with Laurel was a real estate site that was also built from the ground up, was also Rails and like pretty CRUD appy, like pretty basic, just to get my bearings, because I hadn't worked with Rails in a long time. So yeah.
Still using Rails?
Yes. Yeah.
Preferred choice to use Rails?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the back end. Yeah.
All right, let's switch the focus a little bit more back to interviews. I know you guys have tons of questions about other things, but
Did I break something? It's on my lap.
no, you're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's a good approach to ask feedback after an interview or response, or do you feel it's just one week later, or there is a kind of decline that just repeat the question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So just if someone asks a question, if you could just kind of sum it up in your response. Sorry.
It's all good.
So the question was, is it a good idea, or should I be asking for feedback after an interview? So whether or not it's necessary. Okay, so should I ask for feedback after an interview, whether or not that's normal? Yeah. I don't actually have like too much experience with that. Do you?
I guess like not like I don't have too much experience. I would say it's good to kind of follow up at the end of the interview and like ask when you would expect to hear back, and stuff like that. But in terms of like feedback on the interview itself, I'm not really sure. Yeah.
The only time I've ever asked for feedback on an interview was when I didn't get a job, and I asked them if like, do you guys have anything that like sort of tipped you off as to like me not being ready, or like what could I have provided. I sent that email like maybe a few days after I was like not given the job position, but I never got a response. So I can't say that I actually like that helped me in any way. But I think that it's worth it. Like why not? Like if they don't respond to you, then that's fine. But if you ask them, then the ball's in their court, and they can offer that constructive criticism if they have the time to. But yeah, that's my only experience with it. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll just say from our perspective and what we put out there is like in general when you follow up from an interview, like they said, you would just kind of say like thanks for the interview and ask about the next steps. But then if you didn't get the position, you're more than welcome to give that feedback. Otherwise, if we're setting up the interviews for you guys, we will ask for feedback on your behalf. So if we're doing it through Lighthouse, we'll get that feedback for you and we'll definitely reiterate it to you. But for other jobs that you guys, or like if they contact you by yourself for interviews and we don't know about it, feel free to do that yourself. Yeah.
Since now you have some experience with it, what kind of maybe tips or do you wish that anyone kind of thing that you can give to new grads or current students to help close maybe them getting a job or job
Okay, so the question was, what can you do to be more prepared for a job or for an interview, or okay, yeah. So I guess I would say asking questions is really good. Like if you when you get a job and you start working, don't think that you need to kind of put your head down and figure everything out yourself. Like you're still allowed to ask questions. That's probably encouraged, hopefully, at the company that you're at. I guess when you're kind of still doing the job search, it's probably just good to keep coding, which I'm sure you've all heard before. And yeah, I guess just keep working on things independently or with your peers as well.
Yeah, all of those I think are really valid points, especially asking questions. I think Lighthouse really encourages that here, at least with the asking for help button. I assume you guys still have that. Yeah. But in terms of like things that I wish that I had known, I think there's a lot of opinion about like these languages are good and these languages are bad, and like my first job was in PHP entirely, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just whether or not like I think it's whether or not the code is like written in a way that like makes sense, and like if you can actually learn from that. Because I was really hesitant about taking my first job, but that was solely because of like the language, and I was like everyone's been telling me PHP is terrible, blah blah blah, and like yeah, sometimes it's not great because sometimes it's not written great. It's a very accessible language, but like that kind of lends itself to it not being written well. So I don't think that should be something that should stop you from taking a job, but I think you should also like consider the other aspects of the interview and like what the job is offering and what they're kind of like like what hints you can pick up about like the culture of the place, just because like there were definitely things that I kind of wish that I had been more attuned to. Like my first job didn't have version control, like there was none of that at all, and I was like, oh, maybe that's not like, maybe this is okay or it's more acceptable. And then my senior dev joined the team. He was like, what the heck, guys? Like, how is there no like GitHub or Bitbucket? So it's just like little things like that that I was like, this seems odd, but oh well. Like it's, I think it's like if you're iffy about like a position, like it's definitely a good idea to like talk to someone, like be like, is this a normal thing, or is this like something that could maybe like prevent me from learning, and like also like I guess ask those questions. I know like these are really specific things, but like to ask questions about like what the code is like and what the infrastructure is like in that interview, so that you do have an idea of what it's what you're going to be working with, so that you don't like start and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is going to be kind of difficult for me. And that might prevent you from like learning or like meeting whatever learning or career goals you want, right? So yeah. The question was, I just had an interview. Do I remember the questions that I had? Oh man, and what kind of questions they are. Okay, I don't know if I specifically remember, which is maybe a bad thing because it was only like a few months ago. But I know that the interview was cut into like, I guess, 2 parts, just to like evaluate different aspects of being a developer. So the first part was sort of like a general like technical design question, and it kind of asked you like if you were to build this app, how would you go about doing that? How would you structure it? Like pretty high level stuff, nothing too like concrete. And then the second part was a debug or like pair programming type thing, where we would look at a bug together and kind of talk through the problem and try to figure out what was wrong in the code. Do you want to add to that at all? Since you run the interviews.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess pretty much what Steph said, like, yeah, the interviews, I would say fairly casual in a lot of ways, which I think is good. I guess there's also just kind of a few generic, like what you would expect questions. Just asking about like your background or what you're interested in and stuff like that. Yeah. So the question was, have we ever asked about salaries or done like salary negotiation? I have not.
In my interview for this current place, so I was being paid quite well at my last job, but I wasn't learning and I wasn't growing, so I decided to make the move. So when the question came up of like salary expectations for this current job, I knew that I wasn't going to be paid as much, and I kind of already prepared myself for that. So I wasn't too concerned about how much I was getting paid, as long as it was like relatively like benchmark. But I did make note that I was like, I would like to at least have like a path of some sort to see what like how I can get to where I was. And I was like very eager to just start something new and like start learning, so I wasn't too concerned about it. In my last job, I was in a situation where I did have to negotiate, and I was prepared to be like, this is kind of what my peers are earning, and that's kind of where I want to be. And they matched that and went beyond that. Like, so in terms of like the negotiation, there was no real like back and forth. It was just like they had given me like an incredible opportunity. But at that point, I guess this is kind of a tangent, but at that point, I was more concerned about growing and learning, and I was like yes, this is amazing, but I also want to like see myself growing and like feel less like an imposter. And I didn't really get that after a while, so that's why I left. But I think in terms of an interview, if you're saying like if you, and I think if it comes up, it's like totally appropriate to like say what your expectations are. Come with some like research of like what your peers are earning or like what a junior developer would be earning, or like if you're transitioning like where you want to be and how you want to get there. I don't think I've ever really brought it up if it hasn't been brought up, but I think for the most part it's like there's always a question of like what are you expecting in terms of salary, because we have a number in mind. We want to know if that matches what you have in mind.
You guys are always welcome to ask me and Bernadette about that, especially Bernadette because she knows a lot of the companies and like what they've offered other students. And like just based on your education in your past. So you're always welcome to ask us. Also, more times than not, I see it come up in like an application process versus the interview, so you have time to like think about it. I like. I'm sure sometimes they would ask you in the interview and on the spot, but in most cases they're going to give you some time to respond to them. So don't be too worried about that. Yeah. But definitely if you know you're going to get an offer and in a negotiation process, you guys are more than welcome to come talk to us.
So the question is, what is our preferred way of job searching? So I guess for me, I used kind of a combination of my own job search, which was just through various job searching sites. I can't remember exactly which ones I used, but probably the ones you would use. And then also using career services. So I actually got like my original job at Lighthouse and then also my other job through career services. So that was really good. But yeah.
I've definitely found that, so I got this job because I know Laurel, and she recommended it to me, and I was like, it was another case where I was like, I don't meet 2 bullet points, but like, maybe I'll just apply because Laurel says the job was fun and awesome, and it worked out. But I find that just like, at least for me, like knowing someone and like having them like recommend a job to you is probably like, I mean that's not like easy because then you need to know all these people and like, but then there's like the Slack channel where there's an entire jobs thread or channel I guess of like job postings. So I think just like knowing people and like having them refer you or like sending you job postings from their company or like a friend of theirs, that's probably like my preferred way. But yeah, I did use a bunch of like online, like I think I was like on Indeed and like AngelList and there's a bunch of them. There's like a whole doc that you guys provide with like a bunch of websites. So yeah, it can get kind of overwhelming, but I think like of all the things that I tried, like just having someone like recommend a job to me was the most effective. So the question was, have I ever been in an interview where I had a case of writer's block and like the equivalent of dev writer's block, and how did I overcome it? You? I mean, I've definitely had like, I don't actually know what the answer is. Not necessarily even like writer's block, but like, holy crap, I don't know. I think the first step is just to like give yourself, okay, for me at least, my first step was just to like give myself like 10 seconds to just like look at what it is, and try to at least kind of interpret, because like when you're in for me at least, when I'm in an interview, I'm like terrified and my heart is pounding and it's like, I don't even know where to start. So I guess just like taking some time to like try to interpret what you're about to do, and like I mean, 10 seconds is not enough to do that, but just like starting by like walking through it, like just like or I guess like talking through what the code is doing and like or what you intend to do, or just setting up like I guess like baseline ideas. And I think it's like appropriate to like if you're talking about like a high level type like technical design thing, I think it's okay to like have like black box methods, right? Like if you're like if you're starting with this and you want to end with this, but then there's a bunch of stuff in between, you can just I don't know. I sometimes I'm like I don't know what the stuff is gonna do in the middle, but I'm just gonna talk about the stuff around it until in the back of my head I can formulate what happens in the middle. Yeah, I don't have like a concrete answer to that. It's just like just start, start. And I mean like I guess if you like really don't know, you can of course ask for help because like I was in a situation where I was given a question that they had intended for senior developers, and I was applying for a junior developer position at another company, but I had no idea what was happening. So I was like, I need to ask for more like hints and questions, and they were more than happy to do that. And then later they revealed that this question was for senior developers, and I was like, okay, well I don't feel so bad now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that from a career services side. So that's a really good tip to like ask for hints if you're really stuck, because they not only want to see if you get to the answer, obviously that's part of it, they're giving you a question, but they also want to see your process and how you get there and how you communicate it to other people, especially in a position where you'll do like pair programming or working together. They want to see how you communicate that, and that's half the battle. So letting yourself get stuck is obviously not the ideal situation, but if it happens, just keep working through that process. And yeah, like usually people are more than happy to give hints so that you can get somewhere and they can see you communicate.
So the question was, looking back, what are some questions that we wish we would have asked the interviewer? I don't know if I have any like specific questions that I wish that I asked. I kind of wish that I prepared more questions to ask, because I think it does kind of make a good impression on the interviewer if you do have questions that you've obviously kind of thought about and you've done a little bit of research into the company that you're applying for, or you just genuinely seem interested in like the type of work that they do, or like what kind of work you would be doing. So I guess that's kind of a general thing. I don't know. Do you have any?
Okay, first off, do you use version control? That would really help me if you did. I think in the interview, at least one of the interviews for my first job, I said, I really want to learn JavaScript. I'm not very good at it, and I really want to get better at it. And they didn't really give me an answer as to like, yeah, we use JavaScript. We use it regularly. You're gonna learn a lot. They kind of skirted around that, and I didn't really push further. And I kind of wish that I did, because that was like one of my main goals coming out of Lighthouse, because at the time the curriculum was Ruby heavy, and we only kind of we did like maybe a week or two on JavaScript, and I was like, this is what I really want to learn, and I didn't really get that. So I think it's like I wish that I had really pushed more on that, because that probably would have affected whether or not I took the job. I also didn't really ask about like what do you guys do to review code, or like what is the process for like merging a branch of code onto your main site or your main code base. I didn't ask about like technical like design, like how do you guys plan out a feature, like am I gonna get any guidance when we have to build this feature and I have no idea how to start. I also didn't really ask about like performance reviews, or like how often those happen, whether or not they do happen, so those are kind of things that I brought with me to my next interviews when I was looking for a new position, and those are really helpful, just to like gauge whether or not they had actually thought about those things, whether or not like these baseline things that I decided that I wanted in a job were even there. And it was also another question that I also found really important was like, what is your work culture like? Just because like I found that I was just like always kind of sitting at my desk. Sometimes I was like the only person in the office at my last job, and that kind of sucked because I was like, well, why am I even here? Like I could just be working from home if everyone else is. So it was just kind of like little things like that that I kind of just picked up as I like was working at my first job. But yeah, just like things that drill down to like what I feel is like a good baseline for like my own learning and like what I want to do in my day to day.
Do you mind saying what company you work for?
No. Okay, sorry. The question was what company did I work for at first, and I feel like I should not say. I'm sorry, but yeah, I think it's just important to like make sure that you're comfortable with, because like that job was probably like there was another Lighthouse grad that worked with me, and I think for him it was a pretty sweet job at first. So for me it didn't meet my criteria, but I think for him it did. So it's not necessarily the company that's like that would not be suitable for anyone. It's more of a personal, like, what do you want out of this? What is your personal, what are your personal goals, career-wise and learning-wise?
What was the style sometimes it's whiteboard and several interviewers around you.
Mm. Yeah.
What was that like?
Okay. So the question was, what are the types of interviews you've had, whether or not they're like whiteboard, technical stuff, or like just going for coffee? I think I've kind of had most of them, other than like the crazy technical ones that Laurel and I were just talking about, where like you do some like algorithm stuff. But in terms of like the interview process, I've definitely been in interviews where it's like first you do a coding test, like a challenge, then you do a phone interview or a Skype interview, then you do an in-person interview, and then the in-person can either be like, I've had in-person interviews that are like really casual and like just culture fit ones, and I've had in-person interviews that are whiteboard ones where, as I said, there's like a technical design question, or like a one-on-one debug question. Yeah. What kind of you had?
Yeah, I guess I've had probably around like a variety of them. So, like I've had some that are just one giant interview where it like goes through all like the technical, the cultural, the whatever, all in one. I've had other ones where it's like there's an initial kind of phone screen or phone interview where it's more like fairly generic questions, no technical stuff. I guess more culture type of interviews. I've had, I guess, a few like sort of technical but not super technical. Like I had one where they asked me like more of like a logical question, not a coding question, just like a general logic question, which was interesting. Yeah, I'd say there's definitely a variety, but yeah.
I'll add something quickly. So if we set up your interviews, we'll ask the employer, but like make sure that we do. You can like be annoyed at us if we don't tell you. If we set up your interviews, we'll let you know if it's gonna be technical or culture fit or both. So just so you guys know, and if we miss it, please remind us.
You ever had to explain Lighthouse to someone at work, like technical interviews?
So the question was, have we ever had to like explain to an employer what Lighthouse is? I don't think that I ever have. Like, I think they've all known about it. I'm pretty sure. Have you?
No, neither have I.
I was gonna say, I graduated from
Oh yeah, we know them.
Or
They're
what
down
is
the
that?
street.
I guess they like see your resume beforehand, so they maybe like read up on it if they don't know. Possibly. I don't know. Yeah.
So you had 2 rounds of interviews for your first job and then for second job. So if you compare those 2 interviews, do you think they were at the same level of complexity and difficulty? I'm just trying to see how employers view graduate, fresh graduate, and who come to your starting
So the question was, how did my first round of interviews as a fresh bootcamp grad compare to my, I guess, second round of interviews after I had left my first job and had been like 2 years in. My first interview was strictly just culture fit. That's when I was asking about like JavaScript and like stuff like that, but they did ask to see my final project, so that was kind of the extent of like technically what can you do, but it was more of just like tell us about you and stuff like that. I don't know necessarily if that's common. Like I don't necessarily know if they structured it that way because I was a fresh grad, or if that's just how they do interviews in general. But my interview for my current position was definitely different. It was definitely technical as well. As I said, there was the debug question and the technical design question, and there was also like a bit of like culture fit stuff. So I don't know that I can say like what it was like really to be interviewed as a fresh grad, because I only had that one job interview, and it was only culture fit. I don't know if you can speak to that as like what first interviews are like and whether or not they're always culture fit.
Yeah, it really depends. I would say, like, especially for the companies that we see are like smaller companies, so they really have their own style. But I would say in general, in the future, for like intermediate positions, generally what we see is a phone screen that's like purely like super general questions, like they were saying, and it'll be pretty quick, and they're just seeing whether it's worth bringing you in for a tech interview. And then you'll generally see a tech interview, and if there is a third round, it'll be back to the culture fit type of interview. That's like a general structure, but like companies can do whatever they want. And also sometimes they like you'll be interviewing with the devs, and then sometimes you'll be interviewing with HR, which obviously is going to be more of a culture fit type of situation. So yeah, I would say it really varies for junior positions, but I mean, most of the ones that we see either do a combination, so they do one interview that's combined, and they throw a few tech interview questions in, and some of them have 2 rounds. The other difference is if an employer comes and has seen you at speed interviewing or demo day, sometimes after speed interviewing, they're going to go right to the tech interview because it's more of a culture fit, get to know you at speed interviewing. So they'll go to tech, and then with demo day, it's the opposite because they've seen your tech skills and you presented them, and now they want to see culture fit. So yeah, it can vary there a lot for sure. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's a general structure that we see.
Actually, I didn't get your names.
Oh, Laurel and Steph.
So you work at the same company and you had your first interview at that company after graduating. So how was your interview?
So my interview with the company that I'm at, I guess it was like everything combined into one. So it was really long. I remember that. which was, I guess, it was kind of nice because like other jobs you'll get the initial screen and then you'll come in again and then you'll come in again, whereas this, it was just everything all at once, which was efficient, I guess. But yeah, I thought it was not too bad. Like, it was definitely challenging. I think when I interviewed too, it was a little bit more simplified. Like Steph said, that they had like a general kind of, how would you design this, or how would you design a solution to this problem kind of thing. So I had a question similar to that, and then I had kind of, I guess, culture sort of questions with another dev at the firm, and then that was pretty much it. But yeah, no like actual code well, actually, so we did also do like a, not a code debug, but like a code review kind of thing where I would show them my code, which I think is, some people do that as well. So they had asked me to bring in a piece of code to look at. It wasn't like a big surprise or anything like that, but yeah.
I know what the answer for that. I got asked what is 25 times 25, and I was like, I spoke too fast. I obviously got it wrong because I was thinking of like 5 cubed, because I said 125, and he was like, nope. Yeah, it was for this job. So yeah, that just came out of nowhere. He was just like sitting there asking me questions, and then it's like, what's 25 times? And so like, it wasn't like a real question. It was just like, really, yeah, you're really catching me off guard. But, and then I was like, I'm going to talk through this and answer the question because I'm going to take this seriously, even though it's not a real question. But in terms of like real surprising questions, do you have one?
Not really. Yeah.
That is my only real answer to that question. I'm sorry.
That leads to my question. How difficult did you enable technical interviews? Is it super difficult and you just go like, how do you do that? Or you kind of already have an idea of, okay, I know what the interviewer is looking for.
So the question was, how difficult was the technical interview with, yeah, in general? So for the job that I currently have, it wasn't too bad. Like, I was expecting like a really difficult question, especially because like it seemed like all my peers were doing like algorithm type questions, and because they were applying for intermediate roles. So it wasn't too bad. The design question was like pretty general, and it was like good because it just gave me the opportunity to like talk through how I would solve or like build this feature or this product, regardless of like what the technical intricacies are. But as I said, I did do an interview where they did ask me to like explain to them what a piece of code does, and they had intended that question for a senior developer. So I think it really ranges. It depends on like what the company, I guess, like is planning for you. But yeah, I think for this one it was great. It was like exactly like, I mean, it was challenging, but I think it was like something that I could answer. And had Laurel not like recommended this job to me, I might not have applied to it because I saw some points on the job description that I didn't feel like I met. So, do you have any?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like I've never been kind of shot like completely, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like they usually, I think, will hopefully like have an idea as to what kind of level you're at. And I think either in terms of the questions they ask or the level of assistance that they give you, kind of they'll base off of how much they think that you know already. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So the question was, what is the like an approximate range that you would expect from when you apply or when you like have the first interview to when you hear back, kind of thing, or when you complete the process? For me, it's definitely varied. Like I had one company where I had a phone interview and then kind of heard back like 2 weeks later after I'd already found another job that they wanted a second interview. And then I've had others that are like quite quick, like the job I'm currently at. It was kind of you interview and then you heard back like a few days later, at least in my experience. And then in between, I would say in general it's not super long. Like I don't know if I can give an exact time frame, but like usually a couple days between like interviews and hearing back, whether it's like for a new interview or for like a final kind of thing.
Yeah, for my current job, I think it was maybe like a week and a half, because it was like a 2-part interview, and then I heard back shortly after. So I did have to go in twice, so that kind of lengthened it. Whereas Laurel's was one big interview. When I applied to a job and there was that like code challenge, phone/Skype, and then in person, that was kind of a longer, stretched out thing. That was that was also over the holidays. So maybe like if it wasn't over the holidays, it would have been like a 2-week long thing. But then with my first job, I heard back within days. So it really varies on like how they structure the interview process. Like if it's gonna be like a multi-part thing or if it's gonna be like all in one, I think. Are we out of questions?
So I don't know how much you guys can speak to this, but do you feel like you could use a different background, so like a non-technical background, to your advantage in an interview at all?
So the question was, what is our background? I went to school for marketing. I didn't really do marketing when I graduated. I worked in sales for a bit and then hated it. So I just I saved up enough money to do this. So it was marketing, but hadn't actually like gone into the field yet.
Yeah, I did my degree in biochem, and then I worked in like a bioinformatics lab for a few months after I graduated. But yeah, kind of same thing. Didn't really see myself working in that field, so took a bit of time off, and then eventually did Lighthouse. Yeah. I guess I did a little bit because I could kind of play the bioinformatics, kind of. But yeah, I guess not really for me too much. I don't know.
I think the like one of the main takeaways I got from like going to school for business was like doing a lot of group work and like I don't know, delegating tasks and just like communicating in general. And I think that helped me like I don't know, at least figure out how to work in a team environment. Although I think Lighthouse really encourages that already, so I don't know if that was just like enhanced by Lighthouse or that's something that I brought with me to an interview. But I think that was like my main, because like one of the main, at least for me, one of my main things is like in an interview I'll say that like I think my biggest strength is that I'm good at communicating, or at least am able to communicate what I'm struggling with, or like effectively with people who may like have different backgrounds. And I think I learned a lot of that through just being in school. So I don't necessarily know if that has to do with my specific like field of study, but yeah, that's something I generally bring into interviews with me that may not have been directly from Lighthouse, but was definitely like enhanced by it.
Did I think of anything after that? So what do you guys do to like prep for an interview? And like, is there anything that you wish you did in these situations?
When should I repeat the question? The question was, what do you do to prep for an interview, and if there was anything you wish you did. When I was preparing for this job, I knew that it was Rails heavy, and I had not touched Rails in like 2 years. So I did, I think it was like Rails with zombies or something. It was like the Code School like online class. Yeah, isn't it called like Rails with Zombies or like I don't remember. But like I did a bunch of like tutorials, like online tutorials, just to like give myself just like the basic understanding of Rails again. And like for other interviews, I would like familiarize myself with like the company and what they did, and like generally coming up with like good answers to the questions that they would inevitably ask. Not like technical stuff, but like, why do you want to work here? Like, why does our product matter to you? And I will say that like I was kind of picky, and maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was like, if I can't answer these questions, like, why should I apply for a job? So like I would like really work on these things, but I don't know that, like I think those are really valuable, but I think like definitely studying up on the code is like probably the best thing you can do. And then doing some research on the company helps too.
Yeah, I guess just like taking kind of any information that you're given prior to the interview and trying to take advantage of that as much as possible. So like if they do say like bring in a piece of code, like make sure that you know that piece of code and can explain it, I think would be important. And then just like I've gone into interviews before where I haven't really prepared for them, and at least for me that does not work. And like you think, oh, like you can, those like generic questions that you should know the answers to, sometimes you just like blank and don't know what to say. So I would, like, at least for me, I would probably prepare some stuff for that. And then just I guess having a general familiarity with whatever language they're working in. Obviously you can't become an expert in something overnight, but just kind of being like generally aware of how it works would probably be good. So the question is there a way to figure out what languages a company uses before the interview? So I guess it depends on the job, but a lot of jobs that I've applied for, in the job posting, it will kind of say what languages they use. Usually that's more than one, or it'll not what they use, but it'll say like what they're looking for. So that would be a good place to look. I guess if you know someone who works at the company, you can ask them. But yeah.
Who knows someone who works there, and then she says, "Oh, they're actually looking for a junior developer." It just makes the job posting really intimidating to around people. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of job postings are definitely like, they don't really expect anyone to meet all of the requirements by any means. So I definitely would not let that hold you back from applying to jobs. Especially like where you are now, like no one's going to expect you to know more than like one language anyways, right? So if that's not the language that they are doing their work in, then they probably will know that, I would say.
question was, do you have any tactics for beating down imposter syndrome? So I will say that I still have imposter syndrome, especially because I didn't just start this job, but I kind of did, so I'm still new. I don't know a lot yet. But I think it has been really helpful to work with people outside of work and like work on side projects and just like get little apps like done and like work on like Laurel and I have worked on a couple projects now like totally outside of work. Before we even worked at the same company together, we would just meet up with a few Lighthouse grads and like work on a little project or like just like things that aren't necessarily like too complicated. Like they don't have to be some like crazy app. It just has to be like this small little thing. And I think just like working with other people and like seeing what their experience is like is also really helpful because like I always thought that I was like, oh man, I'm working in PHP and I'm so out of touch with JavaScript and stuff like that, like when I was at my last job. And like I think working with other people and like having them teach you these things is really helpful, but sometimes it can like make you realize that like you're not that behind or like you do actually know like more than you think. And I also like some of the web alumni, we bought this like WestBoss course together and we worked through, it was like ES6, and so we worked through this course together and like we started from the beginning and like worked through it. But like in the beginning there were a lot of like really basic concepts and I was like, well, it's good for me because I don't know any of this. And like to my surprise, like some of these other web alumni also did not know what some of these new concepts were because they were not using ES6 in their current job. So it was like that was just kind of like, oh, like I'm not alone in that I feel like I don't know anything because like I'm not. And it just really helps to work with other people. So yeah. I still have it, so I can't say that like actually has like crushed it to the ground, but yeah.
And any last thoughts? No? Last chance. Okay, well, first of all, let's thank Laurel and Stephanie so much for coming in. Give them a round of applause. Yeah, so, I mean, if you learned anything, just know that, like, Lighthouse alum have amazing, like, resources, and they are amazing resources themselves, so use them. They're all in the alum Slack channel when you graduate. But yeah, it was really helpful, so thank you guys so much. I'll stick around for questions from you guys, and if they have time, they will as well. So yeah, back to coding.